Mickey Stanley. Everyone has their proverbial 15 minutes of fame. For Mickey Stanley, they came during 2 weeks in the fall of 1968. He was cast under the intense spotlight of the baseball world. The shift of a career outfielder to the unfamiliar position of shortstop during the 1968 World Series has been called one of the boldest managerial moves in the history of the game. Most observers were skeptical of the move. In his memoir, Tuned into Baseball, Ernie Harwell declared, "At the time, I thought it was a bad move. I checked about 25 so-called experts on the eve of the series, and they agreed with me, but it worked." Beyond the 1968 World Series, the details of Stanley's career appear at first glance to be less noteworthy. However, on closer examination, both his career and several of his accomplishments are quite remarkable. His 15 seasons with the Detroit Tigers put him in a category with only 63 others. In length of tenure with one team, Stanley won 4 Gold Gloves, and through the 2006 season was 12th all-time in fielding percentage for outfielders. He also was a key contributor in the 1972 AL East Division Championship team. Throughout the course of Stanley's career, 3 attributes stand out. First, he was a self-admitted below-average hitter, with a career batting average of .248. In 1999, Mickey jokingly told the Grand Rapids Press, "My grandkids know I played for the Tigers. I don't tell them I was a bad hitter. They'll find out for themselves soon enough." Stanley is one of only 54 players with a minimum of 5,000 plate appearances, with an average below .250. Yeah, but he did so many other things that was the best .250 I ever saw. He was always contributing, and his hitting wasn't that bad either. The compensating factor for Stanley's hitting was his athleticism, versatility, and fielding. He commonly was acknowledged as one of the best center fielders of his era. George Cantor, in the Tigers of '68, baseball's last real champion, commented about Mickey's ability to get a jump on the ball. Whereas other center fielders excelled at sheer speed, Stanley seemed to be operating on clairvoyance, getting to many balls simply on anticipation. On occasion, he would run to the spot of an impending home run, scale the fence, and make the catch. Before he injured his arm, runners feared his throwing abilities. Stanley's natural athletic abilities also were widely recognized. In the latter stages of his career, his ability to play 7 different positions made him a valuable commodity. Finally, equally important were Stanley's character and his approach to the game. As Joe Falls observed in a 1975 column of the Sporting News, he really is a throwback to the old-timer who played the game for the sheer joy of it. Stanley simply signed his contract and never complained about playing time. He accepted his manager's decision about where to play and was loyal to his team. Falls wrote, "He is just there, day after day, doing his job and having fun." In 1976, Stanley told Accent Grand Rapids magazine, "I can't wait to play. I'm the first at the park on game day and the last to leave." Mitchell Jack Stanley was born to James and Betty Stanley in Grand Rapids, July 20th, 1942. He was the middle of 5 children, whose father supported them as a truck driver for the Oven Fresh Bakery. In 1976, Accent Grand Rapids interviews, Stanley recalled, "No matter how tired he was, he would always find time to throw a few to me." The Grand Rapids area was an established tradition of producing major leaguers. Among them were first baseman Wally Pipp and former Tigers Dave Rozema and Phil Regan. Growing up, a Tigers fan, Stanley's boyhood baseball idol was Detroit's all-star shortstop Harvey Keene. He was a little before my time. A 3-sport star in high school, after playing basketball, baseball, and football, his athletic versatility contributed to the success of his teams. In 1969, Pinellas County, Florida, Evening Independent Story, told of a crucial switch in positions by Stanley in an Ottawa Hills high school football game. Playing against rival Grand Rapids South, Mickey played halfback in the first half, and his team trailed 6-0. He was switched to end after halftime. He caught 2 60-yard passes and outran his defenders for touchdowns, and his team won 20-6. On the baseball team, Stanley pitched and played second base, winning the 1959 Grand Rapids City League batting title with a .523 average. In his senior year, he was voted the top athlete in the City League. After graduating from high school, Stanley was signed in July 1960 by local Tigers scout Bob Sullivan for a $10,000 bonus. Sullivan coached several major league prospects, including Kirk Gibson and Jim Cott. After graduation, Stanley played outfield on Sullivan's National Baseball Congress team that won the national championship in Wichita, Kansas. In a 2007 interview, he remembered this as pretty thrilling for a kid my age. In 1961, Stanley began climbing up the ladder, which included 5 seasons in the minors and 5 years of winter ball. He told Accent Grand Rapids, "I look back at the minors, the 12 hours of doubleheaders, riding the buses all day. I remember then I told myself, if I wasn't playing in the majors in 3 years, that I would probably never make it." He started in Duluth. My first game was in Grand Forks. I remember it was snowing, and I had a typical day, 0 for 4. Mickey started slowly, and after 44 games, batting only .223, he was sent down to Decatur of the Class D Midwest League. He finished the season there with a respectable .279 batting average. After the 1961 season, he married his high school sweetheart, Ellen Ann Terrell. In 1961, the 3 members that was to become an outfield tandem met for the first time. Stanley told TSN, "I first met Jim Northrup in 1961 at Tigertown. Following October, I met Willie Horton." Northrup and Stanley were later roommates in the majors. Vying for playing time, Mickey remembered Jim was not a good outfielder early on in the minor leagues, but he made himself into a real good outfielder. Horton and Stanley were teammates for 14 years, and they became close friends. Mickey was noted for his calming influences on the sometimes volatile Horton. In 2007, Stanley cited a time in Puerto Rico where he intervened in a confrontation between Horton and another player. "I got in front of him, and Willie grabbed my uniform in 2 places by my waist, lifted me off the ground, and walked me completely off the ball diamond." He was a strong, strong man. I've heard stories of some of Willie's home runs at Mann's Field, where he hit the ball over the fence, over Cadju, and onto the church driveway, about a 500-foot blast, when he was 16 years old. Monster blast. Not a mean guy, not a mean bone in his body. Returning to Duluth for a full season in 1962, Stanley was joined there by Horton and Northrup. Mickey's hitting had improved. He finished with a batting average of .285 and was selected to the Northern League All-Star team. In 1963, Stanley moved up to Double-A Sally League with Knoxville, again with Horton and Northrup. Despite opening the season strong and hitting .343 on May 7th, he finished with an average of .256. 6 days after the end of the season, Stanley's first child, Stephen Scott, was born on September 14th. But there was not a lot of time to enjoy fatherhood. It was on to the Florida Instructional League, which opened its season October 8th. Managed by Phil Cavaretta and Bill Swift, the team was a precursor of things to come. With 7 future members of the 1968 Tigers on the roster, they took the league championship with Stanley batting .305. The 1964 season was a year of highs and lows for Stanley. He moved up to Triple-A, Syracuse of the International League, but he was pushing up against his personal timetable for making it to the majors. After only 19 games, Mickey found himself going backwards, not forwards. That would be a grind, hitting a meager .160 where he was demoted to Knoxville. This proved to be a personal day of reckoning for Stanley. He vividly recalled, "I had the station wagon packed leaving for Knoxville, and I made up my mind. I was going to the big leagues. I cannot go backward anymore." And 3 months later, he was a September call-up in the majors. Returning to Knoxville in May, he started slowly, going only 1 for 8, but then he went on a tear, hitting home runs in 3 consecutive games. Stanley finished the season with a .304 batting average, and he was named to the Southern League All-Star team, an endeavor to persevere. And in September, he was called up to the majors. Stanley made his major league debut on September 13, 1964, at Tiger Stadium against the Washington Senators, where he singled off Claude Osteen, good pitcher, in his very first at-bat. Did that a lot. In 2007, he laughingly remembered, it was a chopper down the third baseline, about 16 feet, a swinging bunt. Stanley appeared in 4 games, batting .273. The Tigers were faced with a crowded pool of outfield talent. In the spring of 1965, this included Don Demeter in center, as well as Gates Brown, George Thomas, and Al Kaline, Horton, and Northrup. Stanley became the odd man out. Northrup and Horton both stuck with the team An off-season rules change allowed teams to option out players with less than 5 years' experience 4 times, instead of previous 3, and Stanley was moved to Syracuse to start the season. This time he was able to handle AAA pitching, and in 144 games he batted .281, with a personal minor league highs of 10 home runs, 152 hits, 73 RBI. Selected to the International League All-Star team, he led outfielder with a .992 fielding percentage and won a Rawlings Gold Glove Award. In late August, Stanley again joined the Tigers as center fielder fill-in for the injured Demeter. I remember him. He took advantage of the opportunity by hitting .311 in his first 18 games. On September 3rd in Detroit against Washington, his first Major League home run was a 400-foot line drive off left-hander Marshall Bridges. Stanley's impressive play caused AL President Joe Cronin to rave to TSN. "Boy, I like that young outfielder. He looks like an athlete in every respect." However, by season's end, Mickey's average had slipped to .239. In the spring of 1966, Stanley was poised for his first full big league season at the age of 23. He would compete with Demeter for a starting spot in the lineup. Manager Charlie Dressen wanted him to play regularly, as long as he hit .270. He was the starter at the beginning of the season, but he struggled early, batting an anemic .182. While on the disabled list, he broke his finger in mid-May. While on the disabled list, Mickey's former minor league manager, Bob Swift, took over from Dressen, who had suffered a heart attack. Before Stanley returned to the active roster on June 18th, Demeter was traded to the Red Sox for pitcher Earl Wilson. With more frequent playing time, Stanley's hitting improved. Inserted into the lineup when Kaline hurt his hip, Stanley went on a rampage, hitting .382 during one stretch, July 16th through the 24th. In mid-season, third base coach Frank Scaff became the manager after Swift was diagnosed with cancer. For the year, Stanley appeared in 92 games and batted .289. He was impressive defensively with a perfect fielding average, handling 163 chances with no errors. Shortly after the season, Stanley's second child was born, Karen, October 14th. Mel Smith became the Tigers' new manager in 1967 with a pool of rising young talent mixed with veterans like Norman Cash and Kaline. The Tigers contended all season for the pennant. They finished second at 91-71, losing out by 1 game on the last day in a heartbreaking loss in the nightcap of a doubleheader. Stanley's playing time increased to 145 games, but hitting again was a problem. He struggled all season, finishing at a career low of .210. After hitting a 2-run homer on July 2nd in a 3-0 victory over first-place Chicago, Mickey told the Detroit Free Press, "All I wanted to do was do something for the team to win a ball game." And looking back at that season in 2007, he commented, "All I had to do was have a couple of big hits. I felt pretty bad about that year." Expectations were high for 1968. The Tigers, starting strong, after moving into first place on May 10th, they never looked back. Almost the same thing with the '84 Tigers, except the '84 Tigers went wire to wire. The Tigers didn't get there till May 10th, but that's pretty close. Finishing the season with 103 wins, 12 games ahead of Baltimore. Stanley recalled in 2007, "The chemistry was so doggone good. Everybody had good years, not great years. Even the guys who didn't play much had big days where they contributed. A bunch of good guys. There were no bad apples." The one player with an exceptional season was Denny McLain, with 31 victories. Stanley recalled, "I liked playing behind Denny. He worked fast and threw strikes. He challenged hitters." To many, 1968 was Stanley's best season. In a year of lower overall batting averages, he finished the season at .259, with career highs in hits 151 and runs scored 88. In the outfield, he had a perfect 1,000 fielding percentage and won his first Gold Glove. Mickey's versatility was an important factor in the team's success. He spelled cash at first base when a right-handed hitter was needed. When Kaline's arm was broken in May, he returned full-time to center field. On June 15th, against Chicago, he made what was described in Jerry Green's Year of the Tiger as the finest catch Mayo Smith ever saw. Stanley raced 60 yards diagonally across right field and made a diving catch off Tom McGraw's drive. He tumbled onto the gravel track, arose, and doubled off Luis Aparicio at first. He was limping, but waved off Mayo and trainer Bill Brem. In August, when Dick McAuliffe was suspended for charging Tommy John, Stanley played second and short against the Yankees. In late September, Stanley moved to center stage. After the pennant was won, Mayo Smith, searching for a way to keep Kaline in the lineup and to deal with the weak hitting at shortstop position, Ray Euler, Stanley had regularly taken infield practice before games. In 2007, provided the details. I would get to the ballpark early, and I loved taking ground balls. I was always the first one to the field. I just loved catching ground balls. Norm Cash said, "You're not too bad over there." I'm almost positive Norm put a bug in Mayo Smith's ear. It was a shock when Mayo Smith called me up to the hotel room. I had no idea. He came right out and said it. "You're going to be my shortstop in the World Series." He didn't ask me if I wanted to. You talk about a surprise. I said I have no problem with it. But what about the other guys, if I screw things up? He said, "You can do it. It's up to me. You are going to be playing tonight." That night against Baltimore, Mickey was baptized as a middle infielder. In the first inning, he made an error. When Don Buford knocked me on my ass, my first experience was getting flipped over on a double play because I didn't know how to get out of the way. Obviously a quick learner, Stanley went on to amaze the baseball world in the series. In the first inning of Game 1, he was tested by a leadoff ground ball off the bat of the speedy Lou Brock. Brock was out on a close play, and Mickey's fielding at shortstop became a non-factor. He successfully handled 30 of 32 chances, making 2 inconsequential errors. In the World Series, the Cardinals jumped out to a 3-1 lead. In the pivotal Game 5, the Tigers fell behind 3-0 in the first inning. Stanley told the Grand Rapids Press in 1968 it was a little glum, but some of the guys, mainly Norm and Al Kaline, started whooping it up. Kaline kept yelling, "All we need is a few base hits." Stanley led off the 4th inning with a triple to start a 2-run rally. Kaline's clutch single in the 7th knocked in 2 runs, and the Tigers won 5-3. Then, after a 13-1 win in Game 6, Detroit took the final game 4-1. The victory keyed by a 2-run triple by Jim Northrup off Bob Gibson. I remember that hit. In the 7th, to break a scoreless tie, Stanley batted .214, but his replacement in the outfield, Kaline, hit .379 with 8 RBI and 2 home runs. Mickey looked back. In 2000, it wasn't fun. I was just waiting to screw up. It helped getting the first ball of the series hit to me, though I wish I could have played center field because of the pressure. It wasn't fun because I played out of position. Stanley's fortunes churned quickly the following spring. The newspapers were filled with speculations about a permanent move for shortstop. On the first day of spring training, Mickey injured his throwing arm. In 2007, he remembered that day. The first ground ball, Dick Trzeski hit one in the hole. Being the young show-off, I picked it up and threw it off the wrong foot. I hurt my arm, and that was it for the rest of my career. I played with a bad arm. It definitely took the fun out of baseball for me, because it was my biggest asset. Despite the injury, Stanley led the team with 149 games played, 59 of them shortstop. He returned to the outfield as a regular after Tom Tresh was acquired from the Yankees. I remember when Tresh came to the team. Why, everybody was so excited, because Tresh was billed as the next Mickey Mantle, like many players were. Tom Tresh was acquired from the Yankees in June to play short. Stanley won his second Gold Glove and set a Tigers record by playing in 220 consecutive errorless games as an outfielder. His batting average slipped to .235, but he had a career-high 70 RBIs as the Tigers finished 19 games behind Baltimore. I just wish he could have got, if he could have just hit 60 points higher, no telling what he could have done. In March 1970, Stanley's third child, Pamela Ann, was born. That year, Mayo Smith's last as a manager was a productive one. He led the team in runs, hits, stolen bases, and triples, while batting .252. He led AL outfielders in fielding percentage at 1,000, winning his third Gold Glove. However, for the first time in his career, the Tigers finished below 500. Yeah, and this all through the 60s, the Tigers had good teams. I mentioned that the other day. In the next 3 years, under Billy Martin, The Tigers were a winning team. Stanley was a mainstay in the Detroit outfield. Among the Tigers' outfielders, he played the most games. In 1971, he had a career-high batting average of .292. In 1972, he told TSN, "Each year starts out pretty much the same way. I don't think I'm playing enough, and I wind up with more at-bats than I figured I would." That year, the aging Tigers contended all season, clinching the Eastern Division crown on the next to last day of the season. Stanley provided many key hits. Despite a .234 average, he led the team with 18 go-ahead RBI. Detroit losing the AL Championship Series to Oakland in a hard-fought 5-game series in which Stanley appeared in 4 contests, batting .333 in 1973. He won his 4th and last Gold Glove, and he led the Tigers in runs, at-bats, and hits, while hitting only .244. On July 13th, he tied an AL record by making 11 putouts in center field. Stanley's 8-year reign in center field for the Tigers ended suddenly in 1974. On July 30th, he was hit by a pitch and suffered a broken hand. Ron LaFleur was called up from the minors, and Stanley never again had a permanent playing position. Mickey finished the 1974 season on the DL and hit just .221. In December, he was almost traded to Philadelphia along with Bill Freehan. The team was breaking up in the 70s. It was quite sad. But we had the bird and all that, and it was kind of, helping a little bit. The Phils pulled out of the deal. Over the next 4 years, Stanley became a role player. His versatility allowed him to finish his career with the Tigers, while many of his original teammates were either released or traded. Stanley played whenever or wherever he was needed. Ralph Houck, who became Detroit's manager in 1974, became a strong supporter of his value to the team. In 1975, Houck commented, "He's done everything we could want him to do. He's just been great. No moaning or groaning. He's worked as hard as anybody. He's a great guy to have on the club." In 1975, Mickey split his playing time between 4 positions and the designated hitter role. He was hitting .256 when his season again derailed July 25th. He injured his thumb sliding into second base in a game in which he went 4 for 4. After his departure to the disabled list, the Tigers went on a club record 19-game losing streak. I remember that. It was awful. I was in Texas. What was going on? In 1976, the antics of Mark the Bird Fidrich captured the imagination of Detroit fans, and Stanley recalled in 2007, "You certainly wanted to play as well as you could behind him. It was phenomenal playing in front of packed crowds." On June 16th, Stanley contributed to one of Fidrich's 19 victories by singling in the winning run in the 9th inning. For Mickey personally, it was a pivotal year. In August, he became a 10-year man and could not be traded without his consent. There was also speculation that he would be left unprotected in the upcoming expansion draft. His versatility was his saving grace. That year, he played 6 different positions, as well as DH. After passing the 10-year milestone, Stanley played regularly over the last 32 games, after injuries to LaFleur and third baseman Aurelio Rodriguez. He finished with a .257 average, and in November, he commented to TSN, "I'd rather stay in Detroit, even for a lot less money." In December, he survived the expansion draft and signed a 2-year contract with the Tigers. By then, the last holdout from the '68 team, I'm sure. In his final 2 seasons, Stanley was a link between the '68 champs and the nucleus of what would become the '84 championship team, playing with Alan Trammell, Lou Whitaker, Jack Morris, and Lance Parrish. In 2007, he remembered, "It made me feel a little more like a leader. It felt good to be the old man on the ball club." Lance Parrish says, "Hi, Mr. Stanley. I was in the 8th grade when you were in the World Series." In 1977, Mickey preserved Jack Morris's first Major League victory with an over-the-fence 9th-inning catch. For the season, he hit .230. In 1978, Stanley played sparingly, appeared in only 53 games, and hit .278. He was released in December 1978. General manager Jim Campbell, who no one ever liked, told the Detroit News, "Mickey is one of the finest all-around athletes ever to wear a Tiger uniform. But more important, he has been an exemplary individual." The same article quoted Stanley as saying, "I feel very fortunate I was able to stay with the same organization so long. I was never a superstar. I went through some slumps and never heard many boos." Jerry Green of the News commented, "Mickey Stanley, never a superstar, but always the professional." After his playing days, Stanley worked as a manufacturing representative, and later with his son developing subdivisions and as an avid golfer. He played in numerous charity events. Nearly 30 years after his departure from baseball, he had 8 grandchildren and resides in Brighton, Michigan. That's my first spotlight on Mickey Stanley. One of my favorite Tigers ever. He was a consummate professional.
Good bleacher crowd here on a very cool day. Here's the first break.